your first encounter with Twin Peaks, the show, and with David Lynch was through the co-creator Mark Frost. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yes, Mark and I are old friends all the way back to when I was in college. I think we both were in college. And Mark's dad was a professor at the University of Minnesota where I went. So, and he was my advisor, I think. So we go back, I think I knew Mark when he was in high school, probably. Some of it's a little misty, but I think that's true,
What made Mark decide to bring you in on what was developing as Twin Peaks?
Well, I think as I recall, Mark, at that point, I was really more of a theater guy, and I had done some documentaries and stuff, worked on a couple of documentaries. And I can remember a phone call from Mark saying, I'm doing a series with Lynch, and you'd be perfect for one of the episodes if you want to do that. And up to that point, I'd never written a television show. I didn't even know the format, let alone what the show was. It was a great deal because Mark's such a great writer and great guy, and so I got I'm not sure. I think I wrote episode 4, I believe, and I got this, great crash course in television writing from Mark, which was just, invaluable. I would take a whack at a scene, and then Mark would say, you got to do this, you got to do that, So that was great, but that's simply how it happened,
Well, and were you familiar with Lynch's work before you got on the show? I mean, obviously Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart.
Yeah, I'd seen Blue Velvet. And I think I had seen, the one with Kyle,
Right, yeah, Dune and Blue Velvet.
Dune. Dune. I'd probably seen them. I'd say, I'd seen lots of movies, but not in the sense of thinking I'd ever have I'd be connected to that at all. I can just remember seeing it. I can remember thinking that Blue Velvet was, how much I liked it and that it was funny. It struck me as funny. And I remember being in the audience and the people were sort of, the group I saw it with were just completely confused. Average age 80 or something, But
what was your initial impression when you met David Lynch?
Well, we got along great. I think I was sitting in Mark's office, and Dave came by because they were working on The Goddess, I believe, and Dave came by to say hi to Mark, and they were going to go get a lunch. And we both knew the punchline to some stupid joke that Mark said the lead into. We both said it at the exact same time. I hadn't met him yet. I was sitting in a chair and Dave was standing in that doorway. And we both knew this stupid joke, which I can't remember. And we got along just great, from that second on, Yeah, it was just kind of a weird thing. We were like, it was like, as Dave would say, we were Ike and Mike.
And this is your first crack at fiction writing, for television, and the show is obviously different than others. And you hear shows that that have these these ongoing stories that usually when they start they have like a Bible that they refer back to, and you can go off on different tangents, but you have this core going through it. But I'm wondering about with this show, was there a Bible that the writers went through, or was it just, non-restrictive in what you had to write in your episode at least?
As I recall, there wasn't a Bible per se, not a document. But Mark and David certainly knew where everything was going. They knew everybody's plot line, everybody's arc, if that's what you want to. I think that's the right term. From certainly the whole first season was completely mapped out between them, but without a there wasn't really a formal document. But each episode we knew what was going to happen, and we followed a pretty, it was kind of like we followed a soap opera structure. Not that Twin Peaks was a soap opera, but that you say these are the things we're going to deal with this episode, and then you basically are planning 4 or 5 scenes per act that move those along, and we would outline those for every episode. And then within that, you tried to bring as much as you could to those scenes, and then we look at them, and then we do notes, and then do it again, then do notes, and do it again, and but and that was really, Mark was wonderful at that, restructuring, redoing, rewriting. He was terrific, But so there wasn't really a document, as I recall.
Right.
There really was just, the both of them knew exactly what was supposed to happen,
And when this show took over, because I remember, I was only like 12 when the show was on the air, when it came on, and even then, you couldn't not know about this show. The publicity,
right.
the tagline, who killed Laura Palmer, all that stuff. And so I'm wondering, not only how quickly did you realize the show was going to be a cultural thing, but what was it like when it was to be a part of that? It's one thing to be part of a hit show. It's another thing to be part of a show that's on the cover of, magazines and so forth.
Exactly. And I think that's, I certainly realized it because I can remember talking, the pilot had been on and we were doing the first 6, and I have a distinct memory of talking with David in the office, and, we got all these magazines that come to the office, and I think it was Newsweek or Time, got plopped down on the desk, and Dave looks over, and there's his face on the cover of, I think it was Time magazine. And then Dave just keeps talking, right? It's like, well, I guess we're something now, And then I think that within a week there was a Twin Peaks joke in a cartoon in the New Yorker, and I thought, now we've certainly entered the culture.
And before we get into Fire Walk With Me, I got to ask. You were, you became the kind of the one of the big showrunners on season 2. I'm wondering what that season was like, because obviously as that season went on, I remember, I think it had like this unbelievable, ridiculous amount of like time slot changes, day changes.
Yeah.
What is it like when you realize, halfway through it, you're still wanting to put on your best show, but you realize maybe the powers that be are not treating you the way the show should be treated?
Yeah, there's kind of nothing you can do about it. You can, there's an executive, from the network that's always there. You get your person that's assigned to you, but it was just a case of, I guess a loss of faith in it. Do you know what I mean? So you start to bounce around, and then once you realize you're bouncing around, there's gonna be a problem ever keeping the audience, with any. And of course, this is way before, DVRs and all that, which, would have kept us alive easily. Do you know what I mean? But this is before that, and really before cable, I guess, in any serious sense, I think. So that you feel kind of doomed. You keep thinking, well, it'll pick up, but then the bouncing around and sort of how we had to convolute the second year. You realize, that there's a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't. It doesn't do any good to bitch at them because they're the bosses, and it's their network. And like I say, there were only 3 or 4. I guess Fox was just kind of starting. So in those days, you got a 12 in the Nielsen's, you're in trouble. You know, at 12, they'd give you a night. You know what I mean? They'd say you can have 8 to 11 anytime you want. I mean, it was just a different time. You know, had we been on Showtime, HBO, or something, if that had existed, we probably would have gone a long time. Anyway.
And so, when does the prequel start getting hacked? Is that during season 2 or after the show is over?
Yeah, the show's over when we do the Fire Walk with Me. Yeah, and I think
was that always an idea in the background though?
No, not so much. You know, it's funny that David and I were writing. I think we were writing a script called In Heaven, and that's what we were doing. And then I think and it just was on a certain day, Dave came in and said, I want to do the prequel. I'm not done with these people yet. Let's do the prequel. So we started, and I think he might have had a conversation with CB 2000 by then, that they were open to that. But it was not. Other than the stuff that you always. Even in a second season of any show that's kind of dragging along, you do start to think about a third season, but not a prequel. I mean, you always think, well, if we're back next year, here's what we should do. Not in any serious way, but that's just a natural thing that you do on any show. Stories you didn't get to, and well, that'd be cool if this happened to him. No, we were doing something else completely. And like I said, I think it was a script called In Heaven. When Dave said, "No, let's do this. This will be better," and but essentially we spec'd it out. You know what I mean? It was there was not anything more than I think probably CB saying, "Yeah, we'd love to do that." But
was it always an idea that was it always going to be I want to do a prequel, but theatrically, or did the network get a first look at it, then pass on it, then you could do theatrical?
No. I think it was always a movie. Always a movie. I don't recall any discussions with the network about that.
And so what was there any, he wants to do David Lynch says, I want to do a prequel, I'm not done with these characters, and the movie is the last week of Laura Palmer's life.
Right.
Were there any other mandates in this story, like other than the last week of Laura Palmer's life, or?
No. The great thing about writing with Dave is you can go anywhere. We had a whole sequence in Argentina for a while, and whatever we thought up, that was going in the movie. You're true to the essence of it, the dream of it, But there was no. And I'm not even so sure it was we started with the last 7 days. I'm sure that was it. I mean, we're going to do the last week, but I don't think we even started really that way. We just started with how she got in trouble. You know what I mean? And started to work that way. But there was never no parameters. We went all over the place in the first draft.
I gotta ask about the opening image of the film, which is of a television being smashed. That's not very subtle, and
no, it isn't.
I mean, because basically it sets the tone for anyone who's coming in from the TV show. This is not going to be the TV show. Basically, what that's saying.
Exactly. Yeah. That we're gonna, and of course, in a weird way, it is the TV show because there's all the people there, right? I mean, perfect symbol of that. Yeah. But not, as you're right, not too subtle. But the thing is that it isn't like it as with all of David's material. There's not any anger there at all. You know what I mean? It's not like I never found that that part of any of the things we did together. That there's things that you're poking fun at, or you're that'd be funny to do that, but never as sort of as you said, less than subtle. But it wasn't like a fuck you. You know what I mean? It wasn't that at all. I mean, it's not. It just isn't like that. Even when you get shows canceled, it's not, or even when you get fired, it's remarkable how friendly you stay with the people that if you like them, if they're nice, they make their decision, you make theirs, and you go forward. And I think it was Bob Iger that ran ABC then. He was nothing but nice to us. It just was his decision. So it wasn't really like I said, it isn't. You have to kind of view that without anger, because it's not meant to be like,
Right.
Okay, you guys shove it, we're doing this. You know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't that doesn't enter the discussion. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like, well, that'd be kind of cool.
And tell me about, because the tone of the film, one hand you have this very kind of strange, dreamlike, almost impressionistic imagery and sequences, but then also you'll have scenes that are painfully intimate and character-driven, and you got this kind of very tightrope balancing act between those two things that are going on. And so, tell me about, I guess, in the writing process, and then I guess sort of in the making of it, of jockeying that kind of those two things going on at once.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way to look at that movie, or at least the way I do, and is it's all a dream. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is so that you have parts of, like when you dream, there are parts that are, like when you have a flying dream. Well, that can't, that when you wake up, well, that can't have been real, but that was pretty cool. Then there are dreams you have that are like you wake up and you think, wow, I was there. Mm-hmm. I was talking to, I was talking to him, and it seems so real. And I think that's the way to look at it, that it's all one piece, you know what I mean, and mm-hmm. that you get out of it what you get out of it, I mean, I think that's you'd have to ask David, but I mean, I think it's why he doesn't do commentary, whether if he had his way, there'd be no chapters, you know what I mean, DVD, because it's just it's all a dream, so that you like in any dream you have, you take out of it what you can. At the same time, obviously the you're aware that it's a movie and that it has to, all the scenes got deleted, things got cut down, so it made it to 2 hours or so. So you're aware you're aware you're doing a movie, but right. But not to any great extent. I mean, the easiest thing in the world is to say, well, gee, this is, God, we get 150 pages. That's 3.5 hours. We got to go back. We got to get closer to 98 or whatever it actually was. So then you go back and then you say, well, then this doesn't. It's almost like you do the whole thing. You create the whole dream, and then you go back to say, well, now we got to find a through line here. We got to find a plot line that's consistent. Mm-hmm. In a general sense, so that we can hang things on, and we know, or Dave knows, when to shoot, what to shoot, and when we're going to shoot it, and all that stuff.
Well, I'm curious about that.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
I'm curious about that, and then the writing process between you two, and what was kind of the logistics on the duties of that collaboration on.
Well, it's obviously Dave's the boss.
Right.
We would, we'd work from, I think, like 3 to 6 on those days, about that. I'd sit at the computer, Dave would sit behind me. And I would, I'd type in, we'd say, well, let's, like we'd be at a point where we'd say, well, we haven't been to the Hurley house yet, so I'd put interior Hurley house, and then we'd shoot the shit for a while about what would be going on with them, or whoever it is, and then we'd start, and say, how about if he says this, and Dave would say, no, let's have him say that, and then I'd add something, and pretty wonderful, easy way to do it, we'd take a lot of walks, and we'd knock off about 6. And he was living with Mary Sweeney then, and my wife, who was Trudy in the series, we were close. We were about 2 miles apart. So Jill would come over, and the four of us would have a glass of wine, and that would be it, you know. But it was pretty. And then I think I would probably go home, and then probably I would probably clean it up, you know, just literally spelling and stuff.
Right.
That evening, and then we'd go back. You know, we had just like in the series, we had an idea of what was going to happen. You know, we were going to reveal the murderer. You know, I mean, that's the simplest part of it. But otherwise, a lot of it was, as I recall, well, now we got to get Michael Onkeen in. You know, we got to get we actually forgot the stoplight, right? So that was the very last thing we did before we sent it. To CB2000. By that time we were going, you know, but it was a go. But we literally had forgotten to put where we were going to put the stoplight. And that changed anyway. You know, that's really an editing thing. But you realize, oh, shit, it's got to be in the script because people are going to look for it, you know.
And was there ever, I mean, obviously there were no DVDs back then, but was there ever, you know, anything of, well, maybe we should go back and watch a couple episodes, or did y'all purposely not do that?
I don't think we watched an episode, no.
Oh.
I don't remember ever watching it. I think we might have gone back and looked at, you know, things like, you know, small stuff like, what color is that couch? What couch is that? Where is the couch in that house? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
How does that work? You know, I mean, stuff like that you'd go back, but never to go back and say, oh, here's how she talked, and we got to get that in. No, I can't remember us ever looking at an episode for anything other than, and I'm not even sure we did that, but we must have. Other than saying, oh, it's there. Oh, there's that sidewalk, right? You know, there was always things like which high school are we going to use? There was a high school up there, and then there was, I think we used Van Nuys High School down here. So you might look at those, but really not much, you know. When
the script was done, was it locked, or did David allow himself some freedom to add or subtract?
Oh, yeah, complete freedom, you know. That's the deal with, that's the great thing about writer-directors, you know what I mean, that you say, well, this is what it's going to be, and then you know, you get to the set and it doesn't look at all like that. That was kind of the fun of it. I'm not the kind of guy that would say, you know, God, you ruined me with this, you know. For one thing, I hadn't written enough to know that, but no, you know, some of it was Dave was just so great at the moment. You know what I mean? It's like the, you know, it's like the white horse in the series, right? The horse is in the Hayward house. That I was walking through the set, and there was a horse there, right? And I went up to Dave and said, Dave, there's a horse in the Hayward house. He says, pretty cool, huh? That wasn't in the script, you know.
Right.
And at the same time, I also can remember when we were shooting, you know, writing scenes, you know, going back to somebody's trailer and writing dialogue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We got to get this guy here. You know, I want to do this, not that. You know, like I said, we were. It was a, you know, really close collaboration, but Dave, yeah, there are things that he would be completely his genius. You know, you just think, wow, that's pretty cool. Like the, you know, the flashlights lighting, the actors lighting themselves.
Right.
That's Dave. You know, that's not in the script. I mean, that's just.
And obviously, you know, there's a lot. You know, a lot has been. You know, there's obviously now on the internet you can find. You know, if you really look for it, the full script, if you will, of Fire Walk with Me. And so
yeah, a lot of it is kind of surmised, but yeah.
You
know.
Well, and I'm curious about that because, you know, there are obviously these other subplots in the story that, I guess because of time and you know, had to streamline it. And so I'm curious about that process of taking stuff out that, you know, just, I guess you could say it added more texture, but maybe didn't add, you know, development to the story.
Yeah, exactly. You know, a lot of it was that you wanted to get everybody in. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Everybody that was, you know, I mean, they were like, you want to get all your friends back. You know what I mean? And it was it's kind of a unique series. Well, it is a unique series in the sense that how well everybody got along. That's really unique. You know what I mean? So that it wasn't like, well, we're not going to need him, thank God. You know what I mean? So the length was the original length, which was probably I bet the draft we first finished with was probably 160, something like that. Had everybody in it. You know what I mean? Everybody. Then you're confronted with, well, are we gonna make a, are we going for 4 hours here? And we were kind of up for that. I think, if someone would let us do the, fire walk with me with an intermission, I think we were all set for that.
Right.
Why not? I mean, that's the wonderful thing about David. It's everything's possible, right? So why wouldn't it be 4 hours? What's the difference? Then just like with the series, then the business side or the logistics side comes in, and a 4 hour version of Firewalk with Lou isn't going to happen. So then you think, well, now we got to go backwards. Now we got to take stuff out that we really love, but now we got to make it a little tighter. And that's how it goes. That's how it goes down to a length you could shoot, which was still long. You know what I mean? It was still long when it was done. And then that's when, the certain characters started to get taken out, and that was really just. I don't know how David would say it, but sort of too many tangents. Maybe that's the best way.
Right.
We're wandering too much here, and it's losing its.
And when you first saw the film, what did you think? Not only what did you think, but also were you surprised that what the film really plays like more than a prequel is this kind of dread-filled? I mean, it plays like a horror movie. And
yeah.
Were you surprised that it turned into such a legitimate hardcore horror movie when you first saw it?
No. I mean, I wouldn't say that. The deal with the movie, I know people kind of see it as that. What really I always thought, and this is really just me, I think, I always thought everything was about guilt and how horrible or horror guilt is. Do you know what I mean? What all that stuff is. So it didn't. I never really saw it as a horror film, but I know people. I know that is a response. That's a common response, that it's especially because of how Laura dies and all that stuff. But I just no. And I'd seen it all the way along. I'd seen every little piece as it got cut and as it got put together. So. Or most of it. So no, not really. But I understand that response. But I don't. I never thought of it that way, and I don't think David does either. But it's certainly I can step back from it and say, oh, I see why people think that. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's those certain elements, but we weren't really going. It wasn't really going for that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know anything about.
Were you there at the Cannes premiere?
Yes. Yeah.
And so tell me about.
Well, they did not boo. I know that's a common thing. There were no boos. It was kind of quiet, but I think people were kind of stunned. But I don't have any memory of booing. I don't know where that comes from. People were nuts about it. I mean, nuts about David being there, and and it was the first film shown. So the big mucky mucks of the Cannes were there. No, I don't have any memory of and I really, if there was, I'd say, but I don't have any memory of booing. I think it was a case a lot of people didn't know what it was going to be. Because I think it's really, obviously as a prequel, but not like
Not like we know prequels today. Now,
yeah,
it's kind of.
I mean, it's kind of a prequel. It's a weird thing. It's kind of a prequel sequel. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's a weird thing. So, but I've always heard that, and I don't have that memory. I think if you talk to Mary Sweeney or Angelo Badalamenti, those were the four of us that were there. But I just don't. I don't remember that. Do you know what I mean? But I just remember it was it was pretty cool, and Dave had it up pretty loud. It was loud, which was really neat. Do you know what I mean? It was that beautiful system.
That sound mix is kind of intense, and so I can only imagine what it was like hearing it in Cannes at that volume.
You can't imagine, the scene, at the stoplight where the car's wheels are spinning, and holy shit, that was great. That was really but like I said, more, it's like a really bad dream.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite moment of the movie?
I think it's that. Yeah, I like that a lot. I like the Harry Dean's, his when they go see Harry Dean and he cries. I thought that was just wonderful.
Let me ask you about, I guess, the most.
I like the going into the picture.
Right.
Laura goes in the picture. Yeah, those are the. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
let me ask you about the most, I guess, one of the most perplexing scenes in the film, and get your take on it. And that's the David Bowie scene.
Yeah. Well, David Bowie, David's assistant loved David Bowie, so we would always talk about getting. We always talked about we would do as I recall, we always kind of laugh and talk about getting David Bowie to do something, either in the current script we were working on, or something else. Do you know what I mean? And David's assistant, I think his name Debbie Tutnick, would say, well, then David Bowie could do that, and then, so that's how David Bowie got in there, right? Mm-hmm. So then once we kind of decided, we'll find something cool for David Bowie, that was kind of almost, not really, but kind of the cart before the horse, right? Which is a lot of the it's a lot of the writing process of the movie. We'd say, well, we'd have cool stuff we wanted to do. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like we talked a lot about the scene in is it Lost Highway where Robert Blake is
right.
He answers the phone, and that scene always kicked around. David had that idea a long time ago. That would work. That would be a cool thing to have happen in a movie. And there's a lot of those, Before I worked with David, Mr. Eddie existed, the guy,
mm-hmm.
Robert Loggia's part, right? Mr. Eddie was going to be in Twin Peaks, then he was going to be in something else. There are characters that David mostly, but I had some too, that you'd think, oh, this would be a great guy. Well, let's do that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's, we did bits of, at the same time we're doing one thing, you're always talking about other things, like the, we always talked about a Hollywood movie, which obviously became Mulholland Drive. I'm not saying I did that, but you know what I'm saying? But that's right. Saying this would be a cool thing. There was a homeless gentleman outside Musso and Frank's that we used to joke about, that it'd all be in his mind, and stuff like that. So those things are always, they're all there, no matter what script you're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a whole process that, so then we get David Bowie, and then you think, well, we got to get. I think that all came from, and I'd really, I'd have to go back and look at my notebooks and that stuff, but I think that came from, that Kyle didn't want to do Agent Cooper again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, so then we had to figure out a way to get Kyle back in, and that's kind of, I think, where the David Bowie character came from, right? That it would be, some kind of a transition to Kyle. I think that's how it came about.
Right.
And then, so that and then David Bowie, I think, was going to be in the South American sequence as well, some of which got shot,
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so watch David call up and say, Engels is but
let me ask you this.
As I recall, that he was part of that, and Wyndham Earle was in that, right? And that was all the Judy stuff,
Wow.
But like I said, that's the that was the kind of the just sensational part of writing. You kind of go anywhere, and then we always, at that point we'd written so much together. We knew we could get back to where we were going. We just thought,
right.
What happens if we do that? You know what I mean? Anyway.
But let me ask you this. We talked about this earlier. When Twin Peaks the series, just 2 years earlier, was on all these cover of these magazines, this cultural, phenomenon, this juggernaut. So tell me, what was it like? Literally just 2 years later, August of '92. And Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me comes out, and pretty much the reviews across the board are kind of filled with all this vitriol. What was that opposite experience like?
Well, I think my response was I felt bad for David. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That because I felt that it got sort of the reviews kind of went under the heading, he's just trying to go back to his old tricks or something. Do you know what I mean? Or he can't, why would a guy like that do that unless he's just trying to make money or something? And it just was never that. So I felt bad that it got cast in that light.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I don't think David reads the reviews. I don't think it was. I think and the LA review was nice. I think Kenneth Tynan was very nice. In fact, he put it in his top 10 movies, I think. So, it was. You should look that up. But I think that was the case.
Right.
But I just felt bad for Dave because it was just it was not an anticipated response because it wasn't meant as a. It wasn't like, return to Dallas,
Right.
Okay, let's get that guy out of the wheelchair, put a cowboy hat on him, we're good,
Right.
He's good, no one will know. No one will know he's drooling,
And when did you notice the tide was turning and that after a while, people came back to the movie and started reappraising it? When did you notice that was happening?
Oh, I don't, like I said, I personally don't pay a lot of attention to that, but I can remember that about 6 or 7 years ago, I went down to talk to a class at Cal State Fullerton, and a professor at Fullerton, a visiting professor from Harvard, said, I teach your script. I said, you're kidding. I thought, oh, I see. And then, then he went into all this stuff that, of course, he was completely wrong about. But he said, I teach the dream sequences. And I said, there aren't any dream sequences in that movie. It's all a dream. Well, that's not really true. I said, what are you talking about, and that was like the 7 years. Then you could sense that, and then you watch the, and then you get that, so you realize, well, there's a refocus on this, and then you start to get that generation that found the series on DVD, and then that's really what did it. You know what I mean? And you still have people. Is
it interesting that obviously there were those who were of age when Twin Peaks and Fire Walk With Me, was on, but now 20 years later, there's a whole generation removed who obviously weren't a part, weren't in the midst of all that phenomenon, and so they now come to it on their own. It's like coming to it with a blank slate.
Completely. I showed here in Los Angeles, there's the Echo Park Film Society, which is a fledgling group. And my neighbor said, would you come and show an episode of Twin Peaks for a fundraiser? And they have room for about 50. I said, sure, I'm happy to do that. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. And I got to this little room. There were 200 people there. Everybody under the age of 25. You know, it just kind of stunned me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they knew everything. And what's kind of cool is it, and not so much in a geeky way, which is really kind of cool. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure there are those, but these were, you know, college students. You know, that doesn't mean they're not geeky, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
It seemed really a genuine groundswell, if that's the thing, but they knew everything, you know. And I showed them. I don't like I said, I don't keep memorabilia or stuff, but I did find just a dailies tape. I can't remember what it was from, what episode. They watched that. It was like, you know, a half hour of a guy saying, you know, open the door or whatever it was. They watched that, kind of looking, and then they could tell me what the background was. You know, they were telling me, that's that house, right? That must be that, because that couch is. And you think, wow, that's pretty amazing.
And so I take it, have you attended a Twin Peaks convention? Have you?
No, I've done none of that. I'm actually going this weekend up to Snoqualmie for the movie. But this would be the first time I've done anything. I've done, I think, 2 interviews, and one was for the Wrapped in Plastic, those guys, because they just were so persistent. And then I did the commentary on the DVD, which I was terrible at. You know, I couldn't remember anything, so they were kind of getting pissed by the end of it. You know.
Right.
No, I got nothing on that scene. Sorry. Then I remembered that we put the it's the scene where the llama looks right at Agent Cooper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered that we shot the rehearsal because, you know, when you got an animal, you got to shoot everything, because they'll never, you know, they'll only do it once. So that's a rehearsal. That take of the llama looking at Kyle is a rehearsal, right? That the llama actually smelled we gave Kyle some gum that the llama that smelled like something llamas like. So that's how we got the llama to turn. And you know, and I remembered that after they did the DVD, and I told them, I do remember something, and I told them that story, and they looked at me like, that's your fucking story? It was a lonely moment for me, but I did remember something, so I was happy with that. You know, anyway.
And so
I don't.
So what I mean, you're going to your first kind of convention kind of thing, your first time ever.
Yeah.
What is it like 20 years now? I mean, it's coming up on 20 years. You know that this film along with the show, you know, that they're still, you know, current and still vital to this day.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, you know. I mean, it's just, and I guess that's kind of what drew me to it this time. I just thought, well, God, you know, it just seems, it seems incredible to me. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That there's such an interest in it, and that people clearly find things in it that speak to them. It just can't be that it was good storytelling. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There has to be something in there that people respond to in a big way. And that's kind of what I would like to see. I would like to see what that is. You know, what part of that is it that people are interested in? Because it isn't. You know, it isn't, like I said, it isn't like, you know, everybody picks on Star Trek, and I don't mean to do that, but it isn't like Trekkies, you know what I mean? It's not that. And I don't know what it is, and that's kind of what I'm most curious about, too.
And do you know if, because in the interviews that I've read, he seems to, but do you know that, you know, if David always knew that, you know, that the audience would catch up to this? Because he seems you know, when this film didn't do well critically and so forth, it didn't seem, it gave the impression it didn't seem to rattle him.
No, I don't think it rattled him at all, other than he was surprised at I think he must have been surprised at the reaction, but you know, you just, you know, we were there. we were at Cannes. Then they stayed for a couple of weeks, and we came back, and we went right back to work. I don't think we spoke about it much at all.
Right.
So, I think David is so wonderful in that he's truly an independent filmmaker. They're of a major proportion. There's this there was this panel. David and Coppola and Lucas and vendors and all those guys are the same age, basically, same generation, you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Coppola on this panel saying, we all set out. They're all sitting up on the stage, and Coppola says, we all set out with such big plans, and we're all going to do what we wanted to do. There's just one guy that did what they wanted to do. He's over there, right? He pointed to Dave, right? That's what makes him just so amazing, is that it is what it is, I think, and it wouldn't surprise him that they would discover what he could do, what this was so many years later. It's like he's trained as a painter, right? So it's
right.
It's so that you have painters that in their lifetime were never recognized, and I think that probably holds him in good stead. That it is what it is.